Hi guys, and welcome to the next episode of The Gibson Show, where I am joined by Trey Fiebich, the Senior Esports Product Manager for Ubisoft. Trey, how you doing?
Doing great, Gibson. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I know this took a while for us to coordinate, so thank you for your patience as well.
Look, it's one of those things, we've had the opportunity to cross paths at multiple events, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen you at nearly every single Siege event that's happened since, the world kind of got back to some resemblance of normality. But before we start, a lot of people will be wondering, okay, Senior Esports Product Manager, for what does that actually mean? So Trey, in your own words, why don't you tell everyone what your job actually is?
That's a great question. So a product manager in the context of Rainbow Six Esports and kind of Ubisoft Esports in general is an owner of multiple pillars that feed into kind of the overall product. So my role is specifically focused in North America. I focus on the North American portion of the Blast Rainbow Six esports ecosystem, basically, and other esports as well. I've worked on For Honor in the past and did a little bit of work on Brawlhalla as well. And so what that kind of means is I'm getting the product out to the market, so to speak. So I'm working with vendors to get their different contributions from broadcast to, maybe I'm working with a trophy vendor or something like that. I'm also setting strategy to some level for the actual program itself, like working on what does our calendar look like? What do our play days look like? Working on a lot of league operations as well. The North American rulebook, for example, is penned by myself exclusively, and so there's really a lot that goes into it, into the title. There's a lot of aspects of the program that I have to keep in my peripheral vision pretty much at all times, and as well, I have to get all of those aspects approved by folks above me as well. So it's really a role that encompasses just a multidisciplinary side of things, really.
So what you're kind of saying is the final product that people watch on their screens, particularly when they watch NAL, has got your hands all over it. Everything that kind of happens behind the scenes, you get the almost sign off on it.
Right. Yeah. So classically, more so than now, in terms of Rainbow Six, our partnership with Blast is way more of an equivalent partnership than previous vendors we've worked with before. So I definitely can't take a great deal of credit for what you see these days, but certainly in the past, a lot more so. Yeah.
I think one of the things that excited a lot of people when Blast got involved was they'd seen what they did as TO for a lot of other titles out there, and I think when I had the opportunity to speak to Nico, he was really excited about getting Siege involved with into the Blast ecosystem as a whole. How excited were you? Because a lot of people can be wary about change, and I know a lot of people in the ecosystem still are, and I think it scares people sometimes when things aren't the same as they were in the past. But for you, how exciting is it to have a partnership now so you're not necessarily bearing all the load yourself?
I think it's great. I mean, Blast as a partner, they've produced some phenomenal events in the past and some phenomenal broadcasts. And to see what they can do with Rainbow Six is really exciting because Rainbow it's a game unlike any other. And every partner that I've worked with before has had their kind of own interpretation and spin on the best way to present Rainbow Six. No matter who we're working with, it's always exciting to see a unique fingerprint on the final product. And, Blast Fingerprint is a phenomenal one. And so far, what they've done is fantastic. And I'm excited to see what they continue to do with it.
And you spoke about Siege and, the kind of uniqueness of Rainbow Six. Why Siege for you? Because obviously getting into esports is something a lot of people want to do, and then picking the game or getting the opportunity to work the game that they want to can be very hard to come by. So what was it about Siege that drew you in?
Well, So that's a fantastic question. I would say for most people, it's very difficult to actually work the game you work on, pick the game you work on. For myself, I was super lucky because I was a fan of Siege before I started working at Ubisoft. Before I started working on the esports team. But even before that, I was working at Ubisoft in a different department entirely. So for when the opportunity opened up, it was like a no-brainer for me to apply and just see if I could get the job. And luckily I mean, I'm here now, aren't I? But yeah, to answer your question about why Siege, I think that I love FPSs just outright. Big fan of kind of most of the different subgenres of FPS out there. Siege especially is a game that has a layer of depth that is not present in any other FPS title. And I say that without reservation. It's entirely unique in that sense. The verticality, the different level of setting up that one does on the defensive side, and the different level of mind games that one plays on the attacking side, or what have you, like it doesn't exist anywhere else. And so to be a part of that and to help tell that story and to help amplify the best players in the space is a huge honor. And I mean, I love playing Siege as well, so it's kind of like I get to work on a hobby in a way.
I love that, because I think to me it's the exact same thing. Siege just captures the imagination, and the fact that the game 7 years in, you're still finding new ways to look at maps, new ways to look at gadgets and operators. It's something that I love about it. And I think once someone gets hooked on Siege esports, they're hooked for good. It's one of those games where once it's got its claws in you. But you spoke about mind games, right? And you're obviously from North America. And North America famously had NAL played on LAN for a long time, where you had some of the best players in the world at actually playing mind games with each other. How much did the spectacle of having that LAN for a league get you going, I guess, when you get, the creative mindset going, when you thought, yeah, we want to have these players on LAN for NAL?
Yeah, I mean, so that was amazing to be able to do LAN for NAL. The circumstances were not optimal given the pandemic that happened at that time, which did put a little bit of the brakes on kind of our overall vision for that. But even with that caveat, I'm still quite pleased with what we were able to accomplish there. And I think it was awesome for us to give North American players more practice on LAN, and just get them more acquainted with what it's like to play on a LAN build going into majors. There were some successes found. I took an SI, took a major, and the content that was generated on LAN was phenomenal as well. Like being able to have all the players in one city for an extended period of time was fantastic for our content crew. Just having them in person is a whole different ball game, whole different. And I think that perception of it was strong as well. It seemed like folks were really interested in the kind of rivalries that were expressed, and players yelling at each other a lot, which sometimes can cross the line a little bit, but we definitely were okay with a good amount of that.
Yeah, look, it's an 18+ game, and no matter what sport you watch, I know that a lot of people watching this would probably watch the NFL or US sports, and right. that idea of trash talk's pretty big in those sports as well. Logistically, though, was there anything that caught you off guard whenever you did move to that LAN environment? Like, was there anything that you hadn't thought about that came to be whenever you moved to Vegas, or was it just kind of smooth sailing, which I doubt it was?
Well, I mean, there were again. There's the shadow of the whole pandemic cast across that situation. We had to come up with some very creative ways to keep players away from each other. Basically, we had the two the two sides of the stage. We had to keep them far apart, and we had to make sure that they didn't intersect with each other, like on the way to their practice rooms or the stage. So we had some difficulties coming up with like a floor plan, for example, or like a path of ingress for the players. And then we also discovered that resetting the stations takes a little bit longer when you have to sanitize the whole thing, top to bottom. So for the first couple stages where we were on LAN, things were not as efficient as they could have been, and broadcasts lasted longer than they should have. And you know, when broadcasts are long and not due to matches but due to downtime, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking, I'd say.
Yeah, because you always got players who are sitting waiting to play their game, and some of these games had, you know, major implications on the line for them as well. And not only that, but you've got the idea of talent, because usually when you run a crew, you've got talent who are going to be there the whole day. So I think one thing we got to give a lot of credit to you and NA for is you've brought some really good talent to the fray. You know, you think of the people who've come through. Doa came in, he did a very good job. You know, credit to Caliber Jacob. He came in initially as an analyst, and now I think as a host, he did a fantastic job in Brazil last year. Obviously, you've got the likes of Blue, Stokes. I want to say Carter came in this year, and he was phenomenal. I think you've got a bit of a headache on your hands now, having an odd number of incredibly talented casters. And not only that, you've got Parker, and then one of our own. You got coming in from EU. You've got two people. You got Pengu and Demo. When it comes to picking on-air talents, what is it that you look for? Because obviously you've got, you know, the idea of the persona of the person on screen, but there's a lot more to those decisions than just, you know, what's that person like on camera?
Sure. How much time do we have? A couple hours? No, I'm kidding. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I'll start with the baseline from which I judge folks. I've had talent role, not in esports, but I've had talent roles in the past. I did college radio for 3-ish years, something like that. I basically like a talk show, like a proto podcast in a way. And I used that program to interview bands, like some big bands actually at the time, one of which was Ghost. Folks probably know Ghost. Yep, I interviewed them. I think it was the same month they won their Grammy, somewhere around there. Very close timing. So I have that aspect, and then also I've spent almost my whole teenage and most of my adult life as a music performer as well, performing on stage with bands for many years. And so what I look for in talent is a lot of what I looked for in myself for improvement. I'm not going to try to say I was ever like good at any of these things, but I damn near did my best. And so what I'm looking for when I bring talent on is, well, first of all, the medium is the most important thing. Like, you can have someone who's incredibly charming, you know, chiseled abs, arms bigger than your head, but if they can't tell you what's going on in the game, they're not going to be a good caster. So, you know, I'm looking, the category that comes to mind is broadcast storytelling. Like, are you able to translate what is happening into a way that augments the broadcast for people who are watching and informs for people who are not watching, like, or, you know, watching, their eyes are doing something else while they're listening, basically. And I think a lot of our talent are, all of our talent, actually, not a lot, all are phenomenal at that. They're all fantastic at weaving a narrative, taking input from the game and weaving a narrative with it that keeps audiences engaged, and that's number one for me. I also look for a good vocabulary. If you have somebody repeating the same words over and over and over again, even if you don't notice it consciously, it will start to grade after a while. So a good vocabulary is a strong plus. Knowledge about the game. Also, these I'm not gonna order these, so that one is very important, and as are the other ones, but I'm not gonna put them in order. So knowledge about the game is paramount. It like I mentioned earlier, it's an incredibly deep game. It's unlike any other. So if you have someone coming in from another title, they might be able to fake their way through a couple rounds, but it'll be apparent very quickly that they don't know what they're talking about. And look, I respect our audience. Like, people who watch Rainbow Six know what's going on. Like, oftentimes they're, the most enthusiastic of the player base, right? So we need to respect them and present them with talent who also knows what is going on. Let's see. I also like somebody who has a very good presence on social media, not picking fights all the time, I'm not saying, you need to be an overly positive person, but, just don't sink your own boat,
Yeah. No, I get that, because for me as well, when I'm watching talent, and even when I watch back myself, I'm looking at that sort of thing too. Believe it or not, when I started, I had a notebook, and on that notebook, all I did was write phrases that I noticed myself saying a lot, and then, like a prison day system, I'd be drawing a line, and every time I had 5 line through it, okay, I said that 5 times, got to get that out of my vocabulary. And
good.
Again, it's something that I think even some people don't notice themselves when they watch back the cast. It takes someone else from an outside perspective to tell them, you know what, you do say that quite a bit. And again, I'm under the mindset some people have catchphrases or things that they'll say, which is okay. It's very different than...
It's the fingerprint. It's their fingerprint. Yeah.
Exactly.
I would also say a very underrated aspect of a good talent, and this applies much stronger to casters than anybody else on the broadcast, but ability to use dead air, like silence. Silence is an incredibly powerful tool in a caster's toolbox, and it can be used to punctuate a situation, or it can be used to give the audience a break or something like that. It's just very strong, and you'll see oftentimes, like, Parker is incredibly good at this. Something happens on screen that kind of completes the loop of an ironic situation, or like a highly coincidental, just mention something that this player absolutely under no circumstances should ever do, and then they do it on screen. 3 seconds of silence is funnier than any joke that you could ever tell, right? So Parker's incredibly good at that, and that's any aspiring casters, I highly recommend you to start playing with silence.
It's one of the things you have to get used to. Like, when I started, I did some live sports as well, and live sports, you actually have way more dead air than you would in esports. Like, someone told me once, anything up to 10 seconds is acceptable in live sports, and I'm going, if you're quiet for 5 or 6 seconds in esports, that can seem like an eternity.
Everybody start talking about technical difficulties in the chat at that point. Refreshing the stream, like that's going to fix anything.
Is the audio broken?
Right.
But I think that's the cool thing about casting, and I think we'll leave the casting discussion after this, is it is entirely subjective as well. Everybody's going to... have people they like, people they don't like. There's an element of, I think, what works for one caster won't work for another caster, and there's no direct science to it. Like, when you look at the NAL crew, they're all so incredibly talented, but they're in no way, shape, or form similar in any way. Like the Blue and Stokes partnership is completely different than the Pengu Parker. And then the fact that Lynx was able to come in and establish himself as his own personality and within that duo as well, and the fact that Blue picked it up and didn't miss a beat, that was really important as well. So I think the last question on casting, as I said, I kind of want to wrap it up here, was when you brought in Carter, was it a case of, because you knew Stokes was going to be gone because he had the wedding to prepare for, was there any worries at all, or were you like this, or did you know for so long that guy was ready?
So, well, that's the thing. Carter has been working tier 2 broadcasts for quite a while. He did, I want to say, SI LCQ for it. Yeah, for this year. I mean, and anybody who's watched the NA Tier 2 broadcasts in years past knows that there's a lot of raw talent like on that broadcast. And one of my goals with that program was give folks the opportunity to get consistent practice so that when the time comes to call them up to T1, they're ready. And Carter is and was ready. It has been ready for a while. It's funny, if you ask any of the folks that worked on that way back in 2020, maybe 2021, one of those years, I gave them a big rally speech. I'm like, listen, just because you're working on this does not mean that you're next in line for tier 1. And that's the truth. Like you can't have any expectations in esports, as unfortunate as it is. But even though I set that expectation, obviously continually brought those guys up to tier 1. Several, CDAPs, Cookies, Brimstone, like many of those guys do get their opportunity. So, in terms of Carter and in terms of all of them, they do a great job. So I'm totally happy to give them the spotlight.
Yeah, a lot of love for those guys. So let's shelf esports for a second. You brought up something earlier that I actually wanted to talk about, and you said that you played music, you were on stage, and then you used to host your own podcast. Let's talk about that a bit. So tell us a bit about your kind of music career, any highlights, anything you did that you want to talk about.
Absolutely. Well, to correct, it wasn't a podcast. It was a proto podcast, which for all you kids listening out there, we used to have these things called radios where folks would beam their podcast directly to your car, and I was on one of those. So in terms of music, I mean, I'm a bass player. I've been a bass player for 18 years. Pretty much ever since I turned 11 or 12 years old, I was playing with other musicians. And eventually, it started with playing at a community center by where I grew up. Every Tuesday night, there was like a jam session that would meet up, and kids from all around would get together and we'd play like old butt rock songs that, the person hosting the thing was really fond of. So that gave me a lot of practice really early on in just music and playing with other people rather. And eventually I would go on to form bands of my own, mostly kind of in the rock genre. It's just very easy for someone who's young to like get into that, but eventually moving on to like metal, progressive metal, for example. The most recent band I was in, a band by the name of Geminon, was a progressive metal band. That music is just really fun to play, very challenging. Probably the most interesting, kind of aside, I used to produce rap as well.
Really?
I'm not a rapper. I don't even particularly like rap music. I just love making music. And so my best friend and I, from my early, mid, late teenage years, we'd produce just hundreds of rap songs. We barely put any out, so most of them are locked in a vault, and you'll never hear me on one of those as like a vocalist by any means, but I mean, I love producing the music, so it was a good time.
So what do you think?
And then,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say the last bit on my music career. I remember I got hired. This is actually a funny piece of trivia. I got hired when I want to say 16 to compose original music for a play, but the play was a nude play, so I was not actually allowed to see it. So as a 16-year-old composing music for a nude play, I believe the name of the production was Lysistrata or Lysistrata. I never really figured out how to pronounce it, but my parents told me it was pretty funny. So,
what was their reaction the first time you told them you were going to produce music for a nude show?
They thought it was hilarious. They thought that was just the funniest, most charming thing.
I love it. So you spoke about producing rap. Then what do you think of this trend that's snuck into rock this last while, where a lot of bands are bending the genres? And you'll have bands like Bring Me the Horizon. I think another good example would be Falling in Reverse, etc., that are kind of now dabbling between the two and combining rock and metal more so than
Sure.
or metal and rap. What do you think of that as a bassist and from being inside the music scene?
Yeah, I mean, I would say anything that somebody does that is a unique expression of their experience and tastes is a good thing. I definitely don't really listen to that kind of stuff, but I'm definitely happy it exists for those who make it and those who like to listen to it. There's there are a couple of bands like Linkin Park that have had really strong careers producing just a wonderful hybrid of those two genres. And I look forward to seeing what crazy shit people come up with next.
Linkin Park's the only band that I struggle to listen to now just because I'd so much love for Chester Bennington. It's
Sure.
To me that it's like when the two new songs were released recently, it kind of hit me hard hearing new music by Linkin Park. But on your side of becoming a bassist, who was your inspiration kind of growing up and who did you look up to?
Sure. That's a very easy answer. There's a bassist by the name of Victor Wooten who does things with the instrument that are just beyond human capability and perception. I mean, this man is a legend and is just in every sense of the word. And so I'd listened to him. I had no idea how he did what he did, but I wanted to know. And I never really got to the point where I could play as well as him by even a fraction as well. But along that path of setting my sights well beyond my means, I picked up a lot of techniques that are really difficult, and I've been able to play a lot of songs that are really difficult and kind of outside of the scope of like even advanced players. And yeah, just listening to Victor Wooten. I mean, if anybody who's listening to this has not heard of him, as soon as this is done, go listen and just keep in mind that's one person that's making all that sound.
Yeah. I know you were in Ireland recently. You'd said it, and you probably think it's pretty cool that a town not too far from me is where a pretty famous guitarist called Rory Gallagher came from. So there's a statue of him there and everything. So it's kind of one of the positive things about my little tiny corner of the world. But this is where
wait, let me see what band he's from. I have to remember. Oh, was he a soloist?
He did a little bit of everything. He was one of the people who went too soon. One of those many artists who we lost way too soon.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Irish artists gone too soon, the bassist and lead singer of Thin Lizzy, Phil Lynott. I can't. His last name, I'm forgetting how to pronounce it. One of the greats of the 1970s and early 80s. I believe he died very early 80s. Absolute powerhouse of a musician. Still listen to Thin Lizzy to this day.
I think most people do. Especially in Siege as well.
As they should.
Yeah. So you got to live in LA for a while and, be around a lot of the players. And surely a lot of these players would have had interests like that too. I know that some players, they're talented musicians in their own right. This is the sort of thing they do to decompress. Was there any players you kind of bonded with over music or other players that that played a little bit?
Actually, I've never lived in LA. Just spent a lot of time there. My brother lives there, so I stay with him a lot. This is kind of probably a segue to another conversation as well, but I've actually not spent a lot of time talking about music with people in Siege. I don't know why. It's just never really been a topic that came up, and I tend to keep a lot of aspects about myself. I don't want to say secret, but that is kind of the effect in the end, but that's not the intention. So yeah, if anybody wants to talk about music, hit me up. Let's jam sometime.
Yeah, you join a podcast with an Irish guy and all of a sudden you're revealing your deepest, darkest secrets to the world.
Absolutely.
But no, honestly, and players that were living in Vegas and taking part in the LAN, was there any players in particular that you kind of became pretty good friends with, or you feel like the success of NA had a lot to do with that player and what they brought to the table, not only as a player, but as a person?
Sure. I mean, well, I'd say two different questions there. So players that I got particularly close with, actually, I've not gotten terribly close with many players. Probably the player that I've spent the most time with is Canadian. Super nice guy, very lovely individual. But I've in the early days, I kind of made it a point to not fanboy, which kind of led to more so not interacting, which is I do definitely regret like not establishing myself as like a figure in that sense and not spending more time with them personally. But that's also been helpful in preventing my more kind of yes man attributes from, you want the skin, like, oh, let me go get that for you, that kind of thing. And it's also difficult as well, like forming relationships when there's such a power imbalance, and that's always something that I'm very cognizant of, very reticent to kind of navigate in a way. So I guess up to this point, I've been a bit reclusive, but I mean, it's something that I'm okay with, I've gotten a little bit experience navigating now, and I'm a lot more okay with it. So. And I have come across players in Siege. Very often I get my ass handed to me, but sometimes I hold my own pretty well, and those are always real fun interactions.
My funnest one was I was playing some games with Pengu in the kind of little stack that we had with Fresh, and he was streaming, and I made a mistake, and he brought out the whiteboard on stream, and he was explaining what I did wrong, and I was like, oh no. It's like all of these viewers are going to know that I'm a fraud. I'm a fraud. But
that's very brave of you. Very brave. It's I don't know if I could play on stream.
Why not? Give it a go. That's the way I do it. You never know unless you try. So
sure.
I want to talk about NAL a little bit now in particular, not necessarily about your role, but obviously we're going through like a real period of flux in NAL. A lot of players are changing, retiring. You had Astralis players now trying to find a new home. You've got obviously another one of the AAA youngsters who finally hit 18 signing to compete at that level. I think it's a move a lot of people thought would have happened a lot earlier if it wasn't for the fact that he hadn't reached 18 yet. But
sure.
What are expectations like for NAL going into stage 2? Because with change, it takes a lot of time to adapt and get ready. But with the fact that the stages are a lot more condensed, with the fact that there's, a lot of play days, but they're in a lot shorter expanse of time, is there any worries that it might take maybe until stage 1 next year before you see a lot of the big improvements in these rosters?
So that's a good question. Probably to answer the initial outside of the question, do I have high hopes for NA? Absolutely. I think there are so many strong rosters in NA right now, and there's a lot of diversity in playstyle as well. I think that I can point to half of them right now and say, I can see you winning the next major. And then, beyond that, like, you have a good chance, and so on and so forth. So I definitely feel that NA is in a very good spot competitively. And I definitely hope to see somebody from NA win the NA major. And your second question was about the condensed timeline of the stage. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of is very condensed. There's a lot of matches happening, and adaptability is a key factor. Teams need to play like 2 matches in a day. We always build in a break for them so that they don't have to do it back to back. But the reality is, like, if you have a bad match, you have to turn around. You have 2 hours to get your head right back where it needs to be and get back in there and prove that was just a fluke. I think the teams that are the most adaptable rise to the top, and maybe it's a bit tougher for certain teams to make it through this kind of format, but the teams that flourish here, I think have a great a great opportunity to flourish on the international stage.
So there's a big event taking part in a couple of weeks, and there's obviously 2 teams from NA taking part in Gamers 8, and that's M80 and we've got OXG. I did a little podcast with Whippet, and we were speaking about how we tiered out the teams, and we have M80 listed as like right up there with the favorites, who are like, to us, W7M, M80, and G2 were like the 3 teams that we think really are going to win. But one of the things we said about OXG too was the fact we think that they're a team that, as they showed at SI, if you let them get into a role and you let them get comfortable and play their game style, they can beat almost anybody in their day as well.
Yes.
How excited are you to see M80 and OXG going up against, that select amount of teams from the rest of the world at Gamers 8?
Yeah, I'm super excited. Both of them they want revenge. I mean, their runs at SI, like OXG especially, I felt pretty good watching them, and they were a very exciting team to watch. I think that, they're hungry to show what they got, and I hope they do. M80 as well. Their roster is a very interesting roster. It's the most international one that we have in NA, and of course, Europe has many rosters of players made up of different teams, but it's always exciting to see what M80 has in store, especially with 3 regions represented in there. So that's, I'm super excited. I have hopes that one of the 2 are going to win. And maybe they will.
Well, I think when you look at M80 in particular, you've got Europe's best up and coming gunner in Spoit. Like, I don't think you can call him up and coming anymore. Everyone knows he's a superstar. The kid is a superstar. You have Iconic, who was such a, massive part of Astralis and the success that they had, particularly at the NA Major in Charlotte last year, where, you had 2 NA teams going head to head in the final. Some people loved it. Some people thought maybe it'd be nice to have them against another region. And then you got Kino in there as well, another fantastic player. How cool do you find it in your position seeing NA bring talent from the rest of the world in? Because obviously you brought in Spoit, but not that you brought in Citizen from G2 last year as well. So is it exciting seeing Siege become more, NAL become more global?
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, that's kind of the mission statement of the USA, where I'm from. We're kind of a melting pot of everybody who's come here, and the strengths of all of us combined to form a really powerful unit. And I think that that's no different for NA Siege. We bring in talent from other regions and give them an opportunity to shine. Spoit is, he, like you said it, he's a superstar already. He's been a superstar for years at this point. Even before joining Siege, everybody was waiting, even before he joined the esports ecosystem, everybody was waiting to see what he could accomplish. And I'd say he made a pretty powerful opening statement with his first stage, winning Berlin. I like to see this kind of thing, and I hope to see it more as time goes on. And I think it just makes NA a stronger region overall.
And obviously, the next major, of course, going to be in NA as well. The South got something to say. I know that we can't say anything because both of us could get in trouble if we say anything before the 29th. But how excited for this NA major are you? Because I was at Charlotte, I enjoyed it, but I still feel like we were coming out of the pandemic, and a lot of people were still unwilling to travel internationally. So now that we have a major coming up in NA, tickets are going to be announced way in advance so people can get their travel plans sorted. Are you guys going to put on a show?
Is that even a question? Of course we're going to put on a show. It's going to be phenomenal. And hey, listen, NA crowds, we always hear about European crowds are amazing and Brazilian crowds are amazing. First of all, yes, Brazilian crowds are amazing. I've been to both of the Brazilian Pro League finals. I still have the sound of the crowd ringing in my ears from Rio. Just so many people in there screaming for their teams. But I think NA audiences audiences are, we may not have the unique chants that that Europeans are so known and loved for, but we make up for that in just raw, visceral, guttural screaming. And I think that's something that cannot be understated. And I'm excited to see that yet again coming up here at the next major.
Well, you spoke about the the screaming and the passion. When I watched back Charlotte, I couldn't help. Was it Iconic's mum, or it was Iconic's mum that you could hear every single time Astralis did something good?
I believe so. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. So with that, and with it being announced so much earlier than say previous events, with your role in particular and with Blast coming in too, does that take a lot of pressure off you now, or do you feel like even more of a heightened pressure to put on a show?
Well, there's a lot that goes into events. So my role now, I work much less on international events, so I can't speak to it too directly, but I did work on Raleigh Major was my event, for example, Atlantic City, several minor events at that time as well, and so I can say there's announcing tickets early versus late. There's pros and cons to each one. Sometimes it's down to is everything set up in order to be able to sell the tickets? Like, do we have enough confirmed to be able to put on the website to accurately represent what folks are buying? Sometimes that stuff is confirmed early. Sometimes it takes a little while to confirm. So definitely having tickets up early helps to alleviate the stress of like how many people are coming. What do we need to prepare for? What do the logistics look like with respect to those people, and especially during for the events that happened kind of in the final gasps of the pandemic, logistics and understanding the audience that you're working with is very important, and it's a very difficult piece to nail. So I'm glad that things are getting back to normal, and that pressure is alleviated a little bit. So yeah.
You've been to all the events since, that I've been to as well, since the pandemic started. Charlotte, you were in Berlin. We crossed paths in Jönköping as well, where the crowd was less than ideal, but it made for a more intimate setting. We actually got to talk to people a little bit more, and Montreal too. Having been to all those events, do you think that gives a little bit of an advantage too for planning this major, because you can kind of cherry pick the things that were really good about each event and kind of forget about the things that weren't quite so good? Like, are those the sort of things that are in your mindset when you're planning this event?
Yeah. Just to reiterate, I don't really have anything to do with the North American a little bit indirectly, but another team handles that. I do mostly the NA focused league stuff. But to answer your question more kind of broadly, experience is key in everything, and events especially. Events are such a wonderful and unique type of activation where you have a small window of time to accomplish a lot of things very precisely, and it can be very stressful to get everything in a row, and to get everything executed at the time that it needs to happen. And so for speaking for myself, I've worked in events pretty much my whole life. My almost entire career has had to do with events in some form or another. And having tried and failed, before I even came into the Ubisoft team, and learning from failures, and, getting the opportunity to just try stuff is super valuable, and taking notes from that and understanding, looking critically at what happened. Why did this happen? What worked? What do we got to do next time? Who do we work with next time? All these things are questions that can only be answered by somebody who's been through it. So absolutely, experience paramount for event planning.
I love it. So Let's move away from Siege again. There's one Siege topic I want to talk about at the very end, just to have a little bit of fun. But I want to get back to more about you. So,
Sure.
NAL's over for the stage. You know, all the stress of the first one's done. What do you do when you're not working to relax? Because I know I get the vibe you're the sort of person who you think about work a lot because you love it. But
Yes.
in general,
Yes.
how do you decompress and keep yourself distracted whenever you're not working?
Yeah. Well, I play a lot of music. I've recently been trying to learn as many Polyphia songs as I can. As anybody who follows me on Twitter is probably sick of seeing by now. Do a lot of music. I cook a lot. Most of my meals that I eat are I cook myself, which is a wonderful hobby and frankly a necessary skill. Anybody who feels like that they've got some improvement in their own life that they should address, look at your cooking skills and see if that's an area that needs improvement. So I love doing that. I also just love playing Siege. Like I got Emerald last season. I think I'm gonna make the push for Diamond this season. Just a great game. I mean, I play other games as well, but Siege is the one that me and my group of old guys, we get together and we play it after work. That's kind of our go-to.
Are you sick of playing against Fenrir yet?
Well, I can ban him now, so no. I don't know. Like I tend to bring like Zofia, so I just I pop the FNAT mines with the with Zoph's gadget and just continue on my way.
You're a bit like me. You're probably still brokenhearted that Zofia got nerfed into the ground to a
Yes.
1 speed. Make Zofia great again.
Indeed.
That's what I say.
That's funny.
And then with, you know, you being in your role and you're thinking about the future in the next few years, what is kind of your plan for the next few years for both your position as Siege and just your general life? Like where would you like to be, say, 5 years from now?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's a tough one. I mean, I think I can't talk too much about 5 years from now for Siege, but for myself, I mean, that's a question I've been pondering a lot lately. I turned 30 in about 2 weeks, so I'm like, oh God, another milestone. For myself, I've spent the past. I've been working for Ubisoft. I've been working on the esports team for about 6 years, and spent a lot of time like grinding and trying to demonstrate, you know, my skills and my value in order to get promoted and take on more responsibility. And just got the promotion for senior esports product manager. So I think in the kind of immediate future, I don't know about 5 years, but the immediate future, really lean into this role and just do it as best as I can and prove that I am the guy for the job. Outside of life, or outside of work, work is my life. Outside of work, I want to take more vacation. There were a couple of years where I didn't take any vacation, and I don't want to do that again. So I want to travel more, just spend more time completely disconnected from everything. And I really hope as well, I hope to play on stage again someday. That's something I miss from kind of the early part of my adulthood and late teenage years, and I just need it back in my life at some point. So that's something I'm hoping to do at some point.
During the off season, you and Blue have a lot of time, and I know he's a musician, so you two could.
True. Blue, hit me up.
Yeah, there we go. I'm sure you have his number, so I think
I do. Yes,
you could do that. Funny enough, I have it as well. It's one of the random. You know, when you go through your phone, you're like random people's numbers. Yeah, it's like there's Blue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
but we won't message John Herbert Mullen III that often, will we? Leave it at. So I kind of want to wrap it up with a couple of quick fire questions to finish it off. So question one: if you were to build your dream team now of competitive players out of active players only as it stands, who would your 5 be?
Oh my gosh, you're really doing this to me.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh. That is okay. Gosh, I don't know if I can show favoritism here. I'm just gonna say peak EG. Let's move on.
Okay. See, normally when I have a player on, I can be like outside of your own team. Could you name the players you'd love to play with? because it takes a little bit of pressure off, but that's okay. Well then, let me rephrase the question then. If there was if there was 5 EU players,
okay,
that you think are the best 5 to play NA's best 5, who would you put on Team EU?
Ooh, well, Spoit would be on there for sure. Let me think. I would probably put. Can we bring people out of retirement?
Are you taking Pengu out of retirement?
I'm taking Pengu out of retirement.
Okay.
I'm taking Goga out of retirement.
Okay.
Actually, did he come out of retirement recently? Am I misremembering?
I think he went in the retirement. So he was playing for David De Gea, the Manchester United goalkeeper, owned a Spanish org called Rebels, and he played for them. But I think he's recently retired again since that roster left, or that org left.
Got it. Okay. Well, those 3 for sure. I'd probably. I think. Okay. Yeah. I'd put Doki on there as well. And I'm trying to think of one last that I would pick for like a strong supporting role. You know what? Let's put Fabian on there. So it's the dream team.
It's X-Penta G2 plus Spoit. So
yes,
because Doki is G2 as it stands.
Right.
Man, Doki's nuts,
I know.
though.
Pretty brave opinion, right?
To be fair though, like one of the players in NA that I have a lot of love for is Gio. You know, I thought that Sonic's picking up Gio was a masterstroke. You know, the fact that he became available was a no-brainer to get him on the roster because he brings so much more than just his ability in the game as well. So,
yes.
Next quick-fire question. Head over heart, NA, EU, or Brazil wins the next major?
NA.
NA, okay.
For sure. Absolutely. Okay. No question in my mind. I mean, then again, my predictions never deviate far from NA, so and I might be biased.
Last but not least, are Liquid cursed?
Well, considering curses don't exist, I would say no.
Okay. Someday I dream of seeing Palu and Nesk win it. You know, it's just,
they're close. They're very close.
It's a couple of major finals now in a while. It's been a tough run for them, but I think we'll probably come to wrap up now. So I think final statement I kind of want from you is, if you're a Siege fan going into the end of 2023 and 2024, how excited should you be?
The most excited you've ever been. Frankly, we've got a bright future. And you know, Siege is a game that just has a momentum that has been built over the past 7 years. It's not slowing down. There's a lot of cool stuff coming. So, you know, keep your eyes peeled and enjoy the ride.
There you go. Anything else you want to say before we finish?
Absolutely. I want to give a piece of advice to any folks out there who are interested in working in esports or just kind of existing in the space. I've recently had this kick of mentoring some of my friends who are just getting out of college and helping them get into careers. So it's top of mind for me. A lot of people ask me about like how to get into esports. What do you do? You know, any advice? And the thing that always comes to mind for me is like esports is a multidisciplinary field. There are so many different jobs that make a successful esport publisher or studio or vendor or what have you. You know, you have folks that are running socials. You have folks that are editing. You have folks that are running the boards at the studio. There's legal folks that write up the contracts. So there's a very wide range of jobs that one could have in the field. definitely somebody trying to get in, take a look at those different kinds of jobs, and focus on something like that. Really build up your skills and your value before going into esports, and advocate for yourself. You know, your time is worth worth a lot, and you should be compensated as such. A role like my role is one that covers a lot of different fields, like we talked about initially. You know, there are days when I'm like working with our partner on art direction, or I'm reviewing contracts with my legal team, and there's just so many different hats that I personally need to wear, which I'm very thankful that my career up to this point has been so varied, and has given me a lot of different opportunities to learn different disciplines. And I'm super thankful that I have the opportunity to express that now, and to really lean into my really kind of varied past. So to put it into a sentence, you know, if you want a job in esports, you got to start working on something specific. And I'm probably, if it's any job that you could get anywhere else, you could probably get it in esports too.
That's great advice. I think a lot of people watching will definitely want to pick up on that. But Trey, it's genuinely been a pleasure talking to you. I'm pretty sure you probably would have got away doing this interview without the training. I think I was pretty nice to you. Didn't go anywhere you didn't want me to go.
Yep.
But it
absolutely.
It was a pleasure talking to you. I can't wait to see you again at the next event that I managed to go to. If you are watching this, guys, don't forget to give Trey a follow on his socials. I'll put it in the description of the YouTube video. Also, make sure to give the podcast a like if you're enjoying it, subscribe if you like the content that I'm putting out there. And if you're not, just clear up your schedule. Element 1 is starting in NA pretty soon. Go support the NA Tier 2 scene. Show those guys a lot of love. I know Ferme has put his heart and soul into it as well. So go watch Siege, and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.